Hey everyone, this is Jessie Barr. I'm the director, co-writer, and producer of the feature film Sophie Jones, and you're listening to the Filmcraziest Show.
Awesome. And I am Daniel. Cool. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I'd love to start with just asking, what was it like writing with your cousin, Jessica Barr?
Yeah, it was such an intimate experience, I think also because it's such a personal story. And we share the same name. We were both named after our great grandmother. Our fathers were brothers, and we both share the loss of a parent at the exact same age. So it was definitely a lot of intimate conversations, a lot of sort of like bearing our souls to each other and really, sharing sort of like the truth of who we were. And originally, I had never really spoken about losing my dad. I'd never really talked to anyone about those experiences. And then it was right around the time where I'd been alive without him, as long as I'd been alive with him, that I started to feel like an opening to that. And I started to write some things about it and write a script. And it was at that exact time, and I believe in synchronicity, especially with this film, that my cousin, my younger cousin Jessica, sent me this early draft of a very raw script. And I was so moved. It was inspired by her experiences grieving the loss of her mom when she was 16. Um, and I think, you know, I just felt totally, I don't know, it's not a rational thing. It was so emotional. It was so non-strategic. I just felt this need to be the person for her that I needed when I was younger. I also felt like giving voice to a sort of shared experience. I also felt like there was a film here. I felt like narratively this could contribute hopefully to something in the coming of age genre that hadn't yet been done before. So we just started, yeah, working together. I gave her a lot of notes. Initially, there were flashbacks, and it was a different title, but the heart of Sophie, the character, was there, and what I felt like I wanted to lean into was really making it as immediate as possible. And although it's not a documentary, it's not a recreation, it is a scripted narrative. She's playing a version of herself. So there is a lot of like mirroring and reflexivity just built into the film and the making of the film. And that definitely started at even, the writing level.
It comes across as very personal. So just thanks for sharing that and for sharing the story as well. Um, it's with some of these scenes here, like especially the one in the car with Sophie, just with the friend who just lost her mom. Scenes like those were those kind of like just conversations that you guys have had in a way.
That scene was in the original draft that she sent to me. It was a longer scene, but yeah, we shaped that a lot together. But that was always there. And actually, initially, it's funny, that was not in the cut of the film. But then I knew I had to put it back in. And my editor, Naomi Sunrise Filamaro, who's just incredible, and I'm so proud of our collaboration on this film. She really is extraordinary. And we really, pushed each other and moved it into that really like experimental lyrical space, which to me was like, how do we capture what the grief process is cinematically? How do we find structurally like what that feels like? And so I just have to, I want to acknowledge her. She's just so amazing. But putting that scene back in, I felt was important because it's one of the only moments we see Sophie sort of coming outside of herself and her own grief to connect with another person and sort of share that space with them. So yeah, that came from something that, yeah, Jessica had written and was from a real experience. I think of inspired by a real experience. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you put it back in because that was like a great scene. And I felt like kind of like opened the floodgates for her to like ask her dad like just that great moment with the what's your favorite color.
Mhm.
I thought that was great if you wanted just to expand on just like
Yeah, sure. So yeah, that scene with Dave Roberts, who plays Aaron, and then Sophie, played by my cousin Jessica. Yeah, that scene was really also, I think, about a larger thing that we talked a lot about with how people grieve differently, and how Sophie's processing it in her own way, and for Aaron, played by Dave, he's just his love language is sort of just taking care of the girls and like feeding them and making sure they like, get the like, the base necessities met, but he himself is not able to sort of process yet emotionally what maybe she is working through. And that moment of her sort of reaching out to him and asking him that is also, I think, really related to this idea that we don't know, how much time we have. We never know. So it's like to ask those questions now and to really be curious and inquisitive now, because none of us are promised any amount of time, in life. And so I think, yeah, that realization was a big part of that scene.
Also, was it always the plan for Jessica to play Sophie in the film?
Yeah, I think it was, in my mind, it was never a question, because it was like, this is, inspired loosely by her experience, and we are going to be working on this together and making this together. And um, yeah, it wouldn't have made sense to like try to cast someone else to play it. I also just thought, again, like, part of telling the truthfulness of it was linked to having her playing a version of herself, and me leading her through, and us working together on performance. And yeah, so it felt like that was baked into it from the DNA. I always think like it wouldn't have made sense to me to like try to cast someone else. Yeah, I feel like it would just be a totally different film.
Yeah, for sure. Now, on set, like, did the same exact name or almost same exact name get confusing?
No, he always called her Sophie. I always like to call the actors by like their character names.
Okay.
And then also like I was always, I guess, like Jess or Jessie, and she was Jessica. So yeah, you know.
Okay, nice. Now, were you guys close before the film, or did this just really bring you
No,
together?
not really. Yeah, we lived on opposite coasts our whole life. So when we were had family gatherings for Thanksgiving when we were younger, we were always like the family would get together. We have, come from a huge family. But then once those stopped, I think because we lived on opposite coasts, and yeah, there's an age, 10-year age difference. So like it was really the film that yeah, just brought this real intimacy and enmeshment and immediacy, and sort of, yeah, the bearing of our, like our souls to each other around this very personal, yeah, story.
Okay, I love that it could bring you closer together. That's awesome. Just sharing the experience. Do you have any advice for people who might have not been grieving in this way before and might be facing it eventually?
It's interesting. I feel like releasing the film now when we're all dealing with like this global trauma, like
Sure.
and grief on such a global scale. It's interesting. I think, I don't know if I can, everyone has their own process of grieving and their own relationship to it. But I do hope the film helps people feel accompanied through whatever it is that they're moving through. I think, although we can't like take away someone else's pain, we can sit with them, we can listen to them, we can be present with them through it. And I think that when you feel seen in those moments of feeling totally groundless, and whatever it is that you're going through, I think that's it's really powerful. So I hope the film does that for people. And I guess advice, I don't know, in terms of advice, I'm always like, never listen to anyone else's advice. It's like, but also not being afraid. I think especially our culture tends to like pathologize grief, or there's this push to, get over it. And I think just being gentle with yourself and remembering that, your feelings are valid, and also that the grief is always flowing, right? It's like it's constantly in transformation. So even though things maybe feel impossibly hard right now, yeah, remembering that things will shift. And yeah, that you're, as trite as and overused as it sounds, the idea of like you're not alone. I think when I've read things or seen films or and it feels like sort of a hand reaching out of the darkness to you. And I hope that people can remember that like those helping hands are around, you know.
Okay, awesome. I also wanted to talk a bit about the music. Now, the music that Sophie listens to, is that like songs from your youth a bit, or are those ones that she listens to now?
Thank you. Yeah. So that was the needle drops I worked with the Crystal Creative, which is this Portland licensing agency, Tommy and Chad. They were just princes and really went on this like journey with me. I always knew I had a very specific sound for those songs. I wanted them to be like the sort of riot girl, ragey, you know, punky sounds that are like when you're headbanging in your car and you're trying to like obliterate yourself, or they could sound like girls in a band that live next door, like raging in their basement. You know, I wanted to sound very human and very lived in. Some of the tracks were tracks from a playlist that I had throughout working on the film. Beverly is an artist. One of the singers, Drew Citron, is a friend of mine from college, and I've had her songs, been lucky enough to have some of them in everything I've ever made. And she just really captured for me like the world of the sound and of Sophie. And then some of the other songs are Portland-based artists that I found, or you know, Crystal Creative found, like going on deep dives. Also, some are Oakland bands. But yeah, that sort of ragey female vocal is really important. I'm very interested in female rage, and I think it's often underrepresented in films, especially in films that are teenage films or coming of age. So I wanted to like give that heft, you know. And yeah, and then score, Nate Heller is just absolutely extraordinary, and I feel so grateful to have gotten to work with him on this and our collaboration together. And then the sound design and mix was 1000 Birds and Andreas Velasquez, who I worked with. Yeah, it was all of the sound, I think, was a huge part of the film coming together.
That's great. Also, the original song, "I'd Follow You to War," performed and co-written by Skylar Verity, I think you say it, who plays Kevin.
Yeah.
Is what was that like, having that original song in the film as well?
Yeah, so it's funny, that was something that happened because I had been rehearsing before we shot in LA with them, some of the actors in my living room. And then I took them out for dinner, and Skylar just mentioned to me that he was a musician. I was like, "You're just telling me you're a musician now? That's crazy." And I had never heard his music. And so, but I knew that there was this falling in love montage and sort of a reconnecting of Kevin and Sophie. And I thought that is the perfect way to organically weave in some of this. You know, I'll have him bring his guitar. He can, you know, sing to her or teach her a song. And that originally got pushed because we lost time on one of our days. And then we actually ran a little bit ahead of schedule. And in that moment, I was like, okay, we have this amount of time. We've got to get that scene. So our production assistant, Sage Crennan, who I have to like, it's because of him we were able to shoot that scene. He drove to get Skylar an hour away, brought him back with his guitar. And I, led them through an improvisation. And Skylar just started to sing this song, which he had written with Josh Snyder outside of the context of the film, but that was originally, you know, just performed during the film. And everyone started bawling, like we all behind the camera. It was sort of like setting up and then being there to capture this really perfect moment. And he's so talented. And then watching how that opened up Sophie, you know, opened up Jessica as Sophie, how she was affected by that, and watching that in real time was really just, it was such a blessing to be able to capture that. And then I asked him, and he very generously agreed to record another song for the film, which plays in the credits. And then also I put that underneath the coffee shop scene where they first meet. So it's sort of like a little Easter egg secret that now I'm revealing.
I love Easter eggs. Nice. So that was the first time you'd heard the song, or had you heard it before?
Yeah, no, I hadn't heard it before. No, in that
Awesome.
moment, that for that moment, what that needed to be, I felt, was just them connecting. And even if he had been a terrible singer and like wasn't good at guitar, that would have been perfect, because it was really just about them seeing each other and connecting in that moment, and for him to help sort of open her up and to see her wall sort of fall, and just them being together in that space, and that moment of vulnerability, it would have been perfect. But then on top of it, him just being such an incredible, musician, just added this whole other level that
Okay.
then we used to build. Yeah.
And it seems like that was like a great way to build their chemistry as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Definitely.
Nice. Now, one thing I really wanted to ask, there's a scene where the Sophie and her sisters, Lucy and their dad, go to a bridge and then later a waterfall. Did those places have personal meanings for you?
It's interesting. So that was something, yeah, that I into the film once I was scouting. So I really wanted Portland to be a character, and Portland's where Jessica grew up. Again, where we shot. A lot of that was just because I knew I had access to locations. But those locations, my producer Lindsay Guerrero, she had just moved to Portland, and when I was asking her to introduce me to the place, Jessica showed me places and Lindsay showed me places, and then I also was just like wandering and discovering on my own. But those places were places that Lindsay took me, and I just absolutely fell in love with them. And I just had never seen that much, like the amount of water, the lichen on the trees, the way the light falls, it's just so alive and so evocative. And I knew I wanted to weave that into the narrative of the film. And for me, it felt also just like spiritually really expansive. And I imagined that these would be places that maybe the family would go to as a unit, and now when they go there, there's the feeling of the mother's presence in her absence. And it was also a way for me to link narratively mother and mother nature, like the ocean is a giant womb, like like all these things that I felt like could really hopefully work on a more subconscious level. So yeah, that was something that once I was actually in the place and starting to get activated by what I was seeing, I just knew that I had to create scenes that took place there, and as a way to honor Portland, um, and to really make it a character.
Okay. And it's definitely off the beaten track, I think, those places.
Off the beaten track.
Yeah.
I think Bridge of the Gods, I think, yeah, are more like if you're a local. Yeah, I didn't want it to feel like tourist spots. I wanted it to feel authentic to the places. And my uncle actually was the one when I was hunting around for a beach for that last scene, and I was talking about how we need to feel like we're on this odyssey, and there's like these multiple parts that I want us to be with the family. And he was the one that recommended that beach. So it really, I think it came from a lot of people too that like were immersed there, that shared that with me.
Okay. Nice. Was there any locations that you found that you couldn't put in the film?
There were some yeah, it was like finding the school was difficult, getting a school to OKS, even though there was really no interior school shots. I mean, there's like one, but it's just, that was a challenge. But in terms of places that we didn't get, we shot a scene in the Portland dark room, which didn't end up making it into the film, but they were amazing. That was our first day of shooting, actually, was that day. But everything else, no, it was really, we had to be really efficient and really agile. It was a 15-day shoot. And so I had to be really economical about, really getting as much as we possibly could, but also really knowing what we needed, because there wasn't a lot of time to just be like, let's have a random B-roll day today. Although that would be nice, but
Okay.
next time.
Wow. Now, I think this is my last question, but I just wanted to end on a fun one.
Yeah.
That gorilla fact with the fruits. Where did you find that in your research?
Oh, that's Jessica. Yeah, that was her line. So I don't know where she found that, but I was like, I'm not sure where she found that, but no, that's all her.
Okay, it was disturbing but funny. So Jessie Barr, writer, co-writer and director of Sophie Jones, thank you so much for chatting with me on the Film Craziest Show.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for supporting the film.